Hey guys, welcome to the podcast here at Calvary. My name is Mike. This is Josh and Alan. Behind the camera is Robert. You'll probably see him in a few future podcasts as well, of what we hope to be many. This podcast will include not only talks about the Bible, but interviews with other individuals and Christians and their testimonies as well. Today's first episode is called When One Ministry Ends. So, diving into this, I believe, Josh, you probably have the best perspective of this. Calvary has a youth group who is active in missions. That is a big goal of our youth group. And you came up through the youth group along with me here at Calvary, and we were active in these missions. We used to go down to Mexico. What was the situation with that coming to an end?
Yeah, so that was an interesting time, and personally, I actually never went. I know that's perspective. Hey, I didn't go, but it was an opportunity to really get our teens involved in serving, and it was through the youth pastor at the time with some different connections we had there. Came about and was a great way to get them out and to do something a little different, a real outreach versus something just local. It's, hey, let's get out there and let's go somewhere else. Go to some people that have some incredible needs that we have the ability to meet, and so that's kind of where that started, and we did that several years, and it's as times went on, environments change, things change, politics and how things going on. It just got to a point where it didn't make sense from a safety perspective. As a lot of people know, with the situation on our borders, and even this has been 16, 17 years ago now. Even at that point, it was just getting to a point where we needed to transition and to find a different opportunity for those reasons. And so we, from there, started looking for new ideas to be able to give our teens the ability to serve. And again, that's
Right,
that's
yeah.
what it's for.
Yeah, that's
right?
important. And Alan has not been at Calvary for an incredibly long time, but he's no stranger to working with teens and ministry opportunities. Is that correct?
Yeah, so my family and I are not originally from this area. We just moved up here, I think back in 2023 was whenever April 2023, I think was one of the first services that I attended here at Calvary. I've been a bivocational youth pastor from the church that we came from before, and so as part of my career just naturally progressing, we wound up moving into the Conroe area, and one of the first questions I asked some of the mutual contacts that we actually have at Southland Christian Ministries was, hey, do you guys know of any churches in the area, that would be a good fit for our family? And I was recommended to go visit Brother Mark Parker here at Calvary Baptist Church. And so I moved a little bit ahead of my family and was here for about a month while they were still finishing school back where we came from. And grew to just love the congregation, love the people here, and eventually the Lord just led us to join the membership here at Calvary. And so this is really the first time I'm getting to learn this history about, how you guys were involved in that ministry outreach in Mexico, and then how that kind of evolved into what we do with Calvary Day Camp today. And my kids, the first year we were here, attended Calvary Day Camp, and I've been involved, and my wife has been involved as a adult volunteers for the last 2 years. It's been an incredible blessing.
Absolutely. So I know that tons of churches, we're very blessed to have many churches in this area. And, a very common thing for churches are VBS. And VBSs have been around for a long time. They're all great and well. A lot of them operate very smooth. They've done it for so many years. They've really got it down. Calvary Day Camp doesn't look like a traditional VBS. And you were talking about the teens. Go ahead and address that a little bit. What do you mean there?
Yeah, so the way I kind of look at it is a lot of camps, a lot of VBSs are there to provide a service, right?
Right.
They're there to, hey, bring your kids, we're going to do this, and, have some activities, but it's kind of like send your kids here for a few hours, pick them up, go home, kind of forget about it, right?
Yeah, kind of like a little bit of a daycare vibe to it, somewhat.
Yes, which fantastic. They hear the word, they learn the word, they hear great stuff, but we wanted something more. We didn't want to just train the next generation to, hey, go wait until somebody puts on an event and show up, have a good time, leave, and that's it. We wanted, as teenagers, as young adults, really, to have the opportunity to not just go to the service, but provide the service and be the ones that are involved in running and reaching out, and so that they can experience the blessing of being able to serve others and start getting a heart for ministry and start seeing how the Lord can work through service, and that way they just grow up with that mindset of looking for those opportunities to be the witness, to be the light, to be the help when it's needed, instead of just showing up, attending, and going home.
Right. Yeah. And when you put it in that perspective, man, it sounds so easy, because it's the calling to care, right? To love people like Christ loved people. But I got to have a little bit of that insider perspective, having been here when this all went down. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. I remember thinking to myself, like, are we going to be able to make this happen between the cutoff from our Mexico missions to transitioning to this Calvary Day camp that we want to do? That's a lot of training. It was so much more work than I had anticipated. And there were a lot of people that were involved in that. And I think a big role were actually the Boyds. And so something that I had found out, initially I had no clue about this, but they had actually done training for teens previously to do missions trips with essentially missions and training, MIT, right?
MIT,
which is
and
an
Awanas.
Awana. Yeah. So they actually already had the foundation to help with a lot of that training. We also had another gentleman who came in. His name was John, and I think he did a fantastic job. But I just remember, man, there was so much. The church lingo.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about when it comes to church lingo, right? So, I mean, we hear it all the time. We've become used to it. Ask Jesus into your heart. What do you mean into my heart? If you've never heard that.
Yeah, one of the things that I was kind of struck by whenever we first got introduced to Calvary Day Camp, like I said, my kids attended the first year, but we weren't exposed to it as much. I mean, my wife was dropping them off in the morning. I was heading off to work, and we were just kind of doing the summer thing. The first year we were moving here, when we really got in as adult volunteers and watching our team, who's in youth here, go through the training, and then as volunteers get invited to that training session that we do. Man, seeing how much you talk about the foundation that the boys have really put into that, seeing how much, I mean, you look at that manual and you look at the intent behind what they're doing to train teens in the work of ministry, and not only just training them in the work of ministry, but also giving them the heart for ministry, right? And just encouraging that and fostering that. One of the things I didn't realize the first year that we, we weren't involved as volunteers, but our students were there, was the time that the teen students actually spend at camp, and then what they're doing through that process, and the devotionals and the work that the directors and all the volunteers that are involved put into them, and just pour into them for the week, just teaching them and instructing them and mentoring them. I hear the word mentor a lot during camp week. Mentoring them in the effort of ministry. Maybe I can talk a little bit about that. I mean, what's getting invested in the teens that week.
For sure. Absolutely. The another big part of it was, at that time, of course, Josh and I were much younger, and we had different youth pastor at that time. The Kohlers were currently there, and that was a big part of the energy, a lot of the excitement. And they were really also pivotal to finding the right people for the job. And I think that was a big part. And of course, he played a pivotal role in that, all the way up to the point that God called him and his family to a new ministry. And of course, he followed that calling. And so going to talk about that transition, because currently, Josh, you are the youth pastor here at Calvary. Talk about that transition period and what that kind of felt like for you.
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, coming up through, I think we started in 2009. I was in ninth grade at the time, just getting into high school, and so it was a great opportunity. And but even at that point, starting the camp, like you mentioned earlier, Mike, it was a lot more work than we expected. And fortunately, we were able to partner with an incredible ministry, Gospel Lakes Ministries, just up the road from us here in New Waverly, and they've obviously been an incredible help to us. And they've been doing this camp type ministry for years and years and years. And so with their help and resources, kind of gave us the real direction we needed to go. But also, we're very clear, hey, this is a lot of work. And when they came in here and kind of, brought in that first training, that first year, having been involved and done some VBSs and things in the past, neighborhood Bible times, whatever, this was a different world. And we knew pretty quickly that this was different, but this was special. This was something more than what we are typically seeing. And so as a high schooler, getting to see that and really help build it was I think unique for us and others, John and others that have come up through that. So the transition was a little different because we've kind of been here from the start and seen it working, and so you kind of just gradually take on more responsibility, right? But it definitely, once leadership changed and coming into things and then graduating high school, and now
Right.
well, we're kind of out here as the adults, which is scary to think about it sometimes, but thinking about it anyway.
Yes.
We're the ones now that have come into this thing, grown up through it, kind of helped build it up with so many other people's help, but now kind of in that position to be the mentors.
Yeah.
Now we have an entire generation behind us.
Yeah,
right?
that's where we first started really taking a look at why do we do what we do? What are we
Exactly.
calling this? We wanted to streamline what we refer to people, because at first it was just a bunch of hands doing a bunch of things.
Right.
To try to make the camp work in the best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we said it would sure be easier if we just gave titles to things, so we had a clear, what are we talking about here? What do we call people? Why do we do that? And how do we structure this? Right. So that was a big part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so working through that and really helping to define what we're doing was a kind of a pivotal part, because the first couple of years, obviously, we're learning how to do this thing. We're jumping in there. We had great camps, but we're still figuring things out. We're still training. What are we doing? How are we interacting with this ministry? How are we helping to train new people? Pretty quickly we found that it takes 20 to 30 people at minimum to run this camp. And so, we have a good group to start. Well, what about next year? So now you're into, you get done with 1 year of camp, and pretty quickly you're already working on the next year, because it's okay. Well, now we gotta keep training. If this is something we're going to pursue, this has to be a core part of our yearly ministry, and so it does take a lot of time. It is very intensive. And so learning that and transitioning through that, I think really taught us the value of work, number one, but really just helped us to see just everything that goes into these camps and the effort and the people that have helped get us there, right? As you start taking on those leadership roles, you're able to look back and say, wow, I never realized that the other directors or the youth pastor or whatever, you don't realize the work and the effort that's put into it. It makes you appreciate ministry more when you see the people, when you're in the positions of the people that went before you. You start, okay, well, now you can kind of make it your own, right? But you appreciate that more and want to give more to it, because now you understand, wow, they had to sacrifice a lot to be able to get me to where I am.
And that's an important thing to pass on is, the quote's been updated to talk about companies, but it was the grandfather who built it, the son who grew it, the grandson who destroyed it. And our goal here at Calvary was, well, why does it have to be the cycle? It doesn't have to be. If we can be responsible with what God has given us now and be able to pass that torch on to the next generation, then they can also do that, right? And so we can fulfill that mission for the next generation to then allow them to take it into their own hands to continue to build.
Yeah.
Before we go in any further, can you discuss the different levels of what those positions look like? And then maybe
Yeah.
you can kind of give a new perspective to how you see that operate at the camp.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So our worker bees, if you want to call them that, are our teenagers. They're a youth group, and they're our counselors. They run the camp. One of our main mottos for the camp is our camp is for them, and you will see that as we talk about this and discuss. You'll begin to realize this camp is for our teenagers. The kids that come to the camp get the benefit of what the teenagers are doing. But it's for our teenagers to learn to serve. So they're the ones that run it. The day-to-day operations, from early in the morning to sometimes very late at night, it's constant. And so they're our core. I mean, without them, we wouldn't have a camp. They're our workers. And so we have them, but then we obviously need people to help them grow as well. And we have senior counselors as well. As our teenagers get older, we want to see them as they get into the later years of high school. We want to see them start taking responsibility and start training their peers even. And that's been something incredible that I've noticed throughout the years, is to see, your juniors and seniors in high school that have, done camp for several years to now, sometimes it's their siblings, sometimes it's just friends, but the younger classmates being able to guide them and help them.
Yeah, really step up into that role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because from there, out of high school, right, getting into that, college career type area is where we start bringing in our mentors. And our mentors are the trainers. They're the ones that really help provide the instruction and the guidance to what our purpose is at camp and how to run camp. And they kind of oversee each section of camp and make sure that everything is done according to, how we need it to be done according to the curriculum we've created. And so we have that, a layer, but they're kind of also, the mentor is, well, they're the mentor, right? They're kind of the first line of defense for our counselors. They're kind of the person to go to for questions.
Right.
But it's more than just, oh, this is the person training me. We want to create that mentor-mentee bond where our teenagers can know, hey, I've got not just somebody that's training me for camp, but somebody that's trying to help grow my ministry.
Yeah, and
right?
you know what? To talk on that, I've seen it firsthand, both in business and in ministry, where it feels like sometimes somebody gets put into a position, but there's no one there as a mentor for them. And
Right.
they get like placed into a role of responsibility,
Right.
and it's one of those like, okay, I got to figure it out. Well, we don't want the teens, the senior counselors, that is, to feel like they've been dropped into a position of authority where they don't have somebody to say, look, I'm trying, but I just need a little bit of help here or a little bit of information here, where that mentor can step in and say, of course, absolutely, right?
Yeah, and we've seen, like mentioned, over the years, we've seen that, and we've seen mentors that have really taken that initiative and made it their goal to serve others, serve the counselors, help the counselors, and we've seen over the years so many different times where, a counselor that may be struggling with something, outside of camp, that mentor has, they spend 10 to 12 weeks with them, week in, week out, just talking and having good conversation, training, but getting to know them. And we've seen so many times where having that person just to be there has been able to come along beside somebody and encourage them and help them and get them through things that maybe otherwise we wouldn't even know was going on in their life. And so it's incredibly important that we have that level in there for our teenagers, to really help them understand that this isn't just them coming to work a bunch and put a bunch of hours in just so that we can accomplish a goal. It's helping them to grow. It's helping them to grow in their walk with Christ, to grow their ministry, to expand their opportunities to serve others, but then to be able to have that confidence that, hey, I've got people I can go to. We want to build those relationships so that they're not like so many teens in our world today are just kind of out there on their own. And we want to be able to have our teens understand that, you know, dealing with issues in life and things that you're going through, we want to make sure, you know, we have a network of mentors and people that are there to help you, not just for camp, but to help grow you overall as a Christian, right?
Yeah. We have one more layer above that as well, and those are adult volunteers, which is where Alan falls in, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And our adult volunteers are amazing, and we rely on them, you know, so much. These are people in our church that dedicate their time, and, you know, most of them are having to, you know, take off of work and rearranging plans, and but they come out there as you know, additional support, but also really provide some additional connections
Yeah, for sure.
for our teens. And I think that's important, that you don't want to have a situation in a church where your young people are
you have like
are disconnected.
multiple different bodies within one
Exactly.
body, where it's
Right. You don't want that disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation. And that's why so many churches have issues with their youth groups and with that connections and with mentoring, because there's not that bond. There's not that opportunity for them sometimes to grow together and for them to, you know, learn from the wisdom of the older generation, right? And so we want our adults there to be able to be involved and serve together. And, you know, a lot of times, like Brother Allen, like you said, you know, your kids are out there too. You're able to serve alongside your kids and be able to, you know, help them as well. And, you know, that's incredible. We see that all the time. You know, parents and other, you know, grandparents even sometimes getting to work with their families and being able to do that nurturing, do that admonishing, right? And helping them grow. And so we wanted that layered, so that way the church is involved. Because this isn't something that's done by any one person,
And
right?
it's not necessarily the cheapest of ministries either. And I think it's important for a lot of times those people give to youth missions, and now not only can they give to it, but they can partake in it too.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
that's a big thing as well,
Right.
right?
I think one of the biggest blessings I see out of it, and you've talked about it several times, is the multi-generational interaction, right? You mentioned that you have multiple bodies within a church sometimes because there's such a disconnect between each generation of believers within that church. You know, the youth program is the youth program, the kids program is the kids program, you know, then you have adult Sunday school, you have adult this. The fact that you guys have, well, I say y'all, we're members here too, have a program that actually brings together each one of those generations and then brings them together in ministry, in the act of ministry, ministering together, where you have, you know, teenagers that are out there pouring into the lives of those students that come in there. I think we had 114 was our peak this year. We averaged 109, and you know, if you think, well, those are small numbers, you know, it's not small when you're in the middle of it. That's a lot of kids to wrangle during the day. But
Ranging
those,
from first grade through sixth.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And those teenagers are pouring into the lives of them. They're you know, they're the counselors. They're working with them. They're guiding them in the scripture. They're, you know, sharing with them biblical examples as they go throughout their day of camp. Then you've got mentors, older, you know, teens and part of that workforce that are pouring into the lives of those that are coming up and starting to get involved in that ministry. And then as an adult, to be able to go out there and have my teen who's in youth here work alongside her, and even my wife in there as well. I mean, what a blessing it is to get involved in ministry and have our whole family there as part of that, and have the opportunity to do that. Have a church that presents the opportunity to do that. I mean, I think there's a lot of places today that is sorely lacking. And like you said, it creates those divides. And I'm thankful for a place where we not only bridge, but we encourage bridging those generations together and generationally grow together in the Lord. And I think we do that great here at Calvary.
Yeah, it's been a blessing to see. In fact, I've been involved even in our Awana program, and the way that our Awana program has been run, and maybe sometime in a future podcast we'll even talk about that. But it has a lot of the same aspects to it, where we encourage families to be able to work together in this ministry. And so what you see is people and parents. We have people who are have to leave early because they have night blindness and are, you know, in their 60s, and everything to teenagers, and junior high kids coming into ninth grade. They get the opportunity to work in that ministry, and camp kind of has a lot of those same aspects to it because it's a core belief of how we go about doing ministering here.
Right.
And it's been a real blessing to get to see that. So we've talked about the past. We've talked about how it's grown. We've talked about all kinds of things. There are different positions in camp. There are different things that kids do. They're not just at a camp going to play some games and hear a song service. We actually have multiple different stations. Could you run us through some of those stations?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we want to incorporate, the Word of God in everything we do there. So one of our primary things, and starting at the very beginning of the day, is we have a chapel session, and
Yep.
I think that's unique in the camp scene. There's not a lot of camps. You have your VBS, and they have it's worked in throughout, and they have their activities that teach them scripture, but to actually have a church service,
Right, yeah.
as one of your, I mean, you would think, oh, the kids aren't going to want to, sit there for 30 minutes and listen to some guy yell at them, right? But they love it, and we have again, we have a great team that has really made it interactive, but has been able to take that service feel, if you want to call it that, and bring that to camp, and I think that's helping kids to be more acclimated, especially those that may not have a church home or may not be it's really bringing what church is like to camp and getting them used to that, and helping them that way.
A huge blessing about chapel that has been a real big push the last couple of years under the guidance of Adam.
Yep.
Is the fact that trying to return control back to the teens with that mentorship role.
Right.
And so something that he's done phenomenally with was, for a while it's easy to just keep doing a job if you get good at it, right? And it's like, I got this down, I can do it. And it's easy to stop thinking about other people when you do that, and that's dangerous. And,
Right.
and especially when the camp is supposed to be geared towards the teens, it's easy to just say, yeah, but chapel's different. But what Adam has done so wonderfully is that he has worked directly with some of those older teens that are senior counselors and campers or workers, and he has helped with guiding them and helping them build a sermon. And so it's not just the mentor leading chapel or doing songs or whatever. It is now the teens getting not just only taking ownership of it, but they're getting that insight, that extra education. He's got a phenomenal education for being an evangelist, and I think he does a good job of passing on that torch as well in chapel, where the teens get to get up and actually give a couple of the sermons throughout the week, and I think that's super important too.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think too, to kind of speak to that a little bit more, is it also is kind of proof of why we have the training program that we have, right?
Yeah.
We've mentioned it's a very intense program. At one point, we were doing 16 weeks of training for a week of camp, right? Your typical VBS, you have a couple sessions of, hey, here's what you're going to do.
Make sure no kids run out into the parking lot.
Exactly, don't get hit by a bus or anything like that, right?
Right.
We start,
Important.
and now we've been able to consolidate, and as we've learned, we're able to get it down to about 10, 11 weeks. But like you were mentioning, our mentors are spending 9, 10, 11 weeks with these kids, and like Adam especially, they're sitting down with the young men that are feeling called to preach and wanting to be in ministry one day, and he's saying for weeks and weeks he's going through, and they're preparing sermons, and they're learning how to prepare sermons, learning how to talk to people, learning how to lead, and
Learning
that's
how to observe too.
Yes.
Because as a teen, you can be told all the right stuff and you can hear it, but when you have a mentor who is a college age to a young adult age, telling you how to do a job and trying to help educate you in that to help you see success, that's good and all. But going back to the adult volunteer side of it, a critical part of that is not only are the teens being told this from someone a little bit above them in age, but now they're also seeing the elders of a church who are active in this ministry as well, and seeing that life being lived out. And that's huge,
Yeah.
right? Because now you're seeing that it's not just something that they say; it's something that they actually do.
right, definitely. So obviously chapel is an integral part. I mean, it's the purpose at the end of the day of why we want to have this camp. It's to be an outreach, to go into the world and preach the gospel, to evangelize the lost, right? That is our goal, is to see these kids come to Christ. And so we have to have that as part. That's why we're there. But obviously, camp is for for the teens, for the kids. They're young, they want to have fun, right? They don't want to go to camp and be standing around twiddling their thumbs all day, walking around just why are we here? So we make it fun. So we have a lot of different opportunities for that. We have a great game time section, and now these sections, they're fast paced. They run 25 to 30 minutes from as soon as we get there at 9:15 to as soon as we leave at 12:15. It is nonstop. And so we have some great opportunities, with again games. Get out there, get some energy out of them. You're welcome, parents. And so kind of you wear them out of it, but they love it, right?
Yeah.
But it's more than you gotta remember that every station we have is not just chapel. It's just games. It's not just boating and fishing. It's whether the kids realize it or not. It's geared to getting them to build those relationships.
Right. Yeah.
To be able to hear from their counselor, from their mentor, to grow with them. To open up to them. The one thing that we train our counselors is use this as an opportunity to learn who they are. One of the very first things we tell them is, number one, learn their name. Right.
Right. Yep.
Make it personal. Learn these kids, and because that goes a lot farther than anybody could ever realize. When a first grader, second, third, when they realize that, hey, this to them, adult in their eyes, has taken time to for me, right? And so every station we have is geared towards that. But also to get them involved with their friends and have fun. We want them to have fun. That's camp wouldn't be camp if it wasn't fun, right? Yeah. And so we have our games. We have a fishing and boating section, which is fantastic. We have turned that into a competition. That's kind of the big thing at camp, right?
Oh, yeah, you got to catch big red.
Yeah, exactly. And we go out with trophies and prizes and things. Incentivize them wanting to be there, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. And the hayride and the skits and stuff, and even driving by with the kids on the hayride, I see Alan out here. Kids over there like, whoa, he's got this bass that he just caught. This thing that's a hefty little boy right there.
Yeah. So the last couple of years that I've been out there, getting approached by Brother Boyd and you and John, hey, we'd love to have your help. What do you want to help out with? So, hey, man, just wherever you guys would put me. And for the last 2 years, I've wound up at boats. And that may be by design, I don't know. But so, I take off every summer to come do this. And when I get back to work the next week, people ask me, so what'd you do on your vacation off? And I said, well, business stuff, onboarding, offboarding, that kind of thing. It's always the joke with them, right? But no, it is such a blessing to see those kids come out there and to get involved in those things and to be, I don't go out there to tell the teens what to do. I just show up and I'm like, hey, what do you need? Yeah. Right. It just to be a help to them, let them know, hey, we're supporting you in this. You guys are, running the camp for the week, and we're just here to support you. I do get those break times. Usually there's a section where, everybody's at a different thing, and so we get about a 30-minute break during the day, and I always bring a fishing pole with me, and man, they were biting this year. There was quite a few of them. So there was a couple times you guys drove by, and I was still holding one.
Yeah. It was some good fish this year. Indeed. It's it's been a real blessing the whole trip through. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about outside perspective here?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm interested in, and you kind of touched on it earlier when you were talking about, how you guys, how Calvary Day Camp was born. You mentioned the Gospel Lakes Ranch up there. Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about the history of that organization and how we as a church, as Calvary, got kind of paired up with them in this ministry? I'm kind of interested in their history.
From my understanding, like you said, a little bit of this is limited because I wasn't in the decision-making process at that time. I was 9th grade. You were going into 10th grade, so you just finished 9th grade. And so at this point in time, there's a little bit of limited information. I did have a fellow friend at school. Her name was Mariah. And she was active in a few church ministries that actually used that facility prior to that.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was something that we found out later, or if that was something where in conversation, the Boyds kind of were like, okay, what facility do you guys use for your ministries? So that could have been it. And part of it could have just been searching. And so I know that between the Kohlers and the Boyds, they're pretty extensive on finding some pretty good opportunities.
Gotcha.
And Mr. Boyd finds opportunities for all kinds of crazy things. And so he's worked around computers his whole life and all kinds of stuff. And he knows what to look for. So
How many years have we been holding camp there?
This year was 16.
would be
16
17,
years.
but COVID had a year.
Gotcha.
It was the best year. We had our old shirts from the year before, had the date
Yes,
on it. It was
indeed,
fantastic.
indeed, yeah.
So one thing I noticed, you had actually asked me to cover the chapel service for the teens Wednesday night. Man, that is a beautiful building. And I walked out there, and it actually reminded me of somewhere back where I'm from, called Frank's Branch Cemetery. There's a church out there that's a little over 100 years old, and it looked almost like it was another building right out of the era. But when you walk back out, there's a cornerstone that says 2022. What can you guys tell me about the building of that church? I mean, I didn't realize it was that new.
Yeah, and that's a vision that the owners, the Hashas, have had for a long time, and Brother Benny is involved and does a lot of lay preaching and involved in a quartet. But they wanted something they wanted a church.
Yeah.
They wanted something where they could have a special service, have guests out, have friends. It's not something that they have weekly services, but they wanted, as they did their camps, and again, they wanted the kids, they wanted people who may not have ever really been around that a lot to be able to really see what church is while at camp, right?
Right.
And it's just, again, it's a vision they've had for a really long time, and through a lot of really incredible partners, we're able to get that done.
It was an incredible answer to prayer on our side.
Yeah.
Because as our camp grew in numbers, we started to look at some of where we were doing camp, right? We're at the campgrounds, but where's arts and crafts stationed at? We're going to have to transition them somewhere where there's more seating.
Right.
Where are we doing game time? Well, if we're not in the field and it's raining, do we have space under the awning? All these questions that we started to have. But one of the biggest things that we're like, this needs to be addressed. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we got to figure this out. There is a annex small room at the end of where the cafeteria is located on these campgrounds. And in that little annex right there, that was chapel,
Wow.
which had two problems. The size,
Yeah.
and you're right next to the lunchroom. And kids are sectioned by a few age groups. And so as they're rotating through areas, there would be chapel services trying to happen
Right next to lunch.
right next to lunch.
Yeah.
And kids would be wired coming off of game
yeah.
time or whatever. Maybe they caught a huge fish on their fishing competition. Whatever it was, they would end up in lunch. And then you have this distraction happening.
Right.
And we're like, we want there to be a place where these kids are not distracted, where we have more room. That it felt like the chapel section was kind of thrown in there, and that was kind of a huge answer to prayer. And from my understanding, the people who built it, that's a ministry that they do. They travel around the entire South area and do those builds. They're
So
really good.
16 years you guys been doing this. Would have been 17 COVID had a year. I've only got to experience the last 2 years, and I've seen what God's been able to do through that, and then the blessing it's been to not only the church but to the teens, to the students. Tell me about some of the fruits you guys have seen out of that over those 16 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we've seen, I don't even know at this point, dozens or more than that of kids receive Christ.
Yeah,
and
amen.
I think, I don't try to keep up with numbers, because if it's one's good enough, right?
Yeah,
It's worth it.
absolutely.
But I would say typically we probably have between 5 to 8 children a year accept Christ, somewhere in there.
Awesome.
So do the math. 16 years. I'm
What a blessing.
Yeah,
No, that's
so-
great.
But even more incredible than that, and the thing that I think for us keeps us motivated, to keep doing it is we have had several of our teenagers throughout the years accept Christ to camp.
Amen.
And again, that's why we tell them this is for you. This is and it's incredible as they they're hearing the same lessons the kids are hearing, but we have some devotional times. We have our chapel time, and we're also when the kids aren't there, we're spending time in the Word, and we're challenging them as well. And it's incredible over the years how many have gotten in the middle of camp and been convicted and realize, hey, I'm doing this, it's fun, but like they realize there's a missing piece,
Right.
and that's been incredible. That's one of the things for me that it's just again been that motivation, because it really goes to show of and is the proof of why we're doing this is those fruit. And so it's amazing to see that from both sides.
And it's also there's also something to be said about, iron does sharpen iron. The Bible talks about being cautious when you fall, if you fall by yourself, right? And life continues. No matter what you're going through in your moment of life, whatever you're struggling with, whatever pains have come into your life, those things are happening. But it's not like camp just stops until you get to where you need to be for camp to happen. And so what I have found to be a huge blessing in my life was getting those conversations with other mentors who might be going through a rough patch, and they just need that fellowship. They just need that brother, and it's like they're involved in the ministry. They're pouring their heart into it, but outside of camp, the waters are rough. And they're on a boat that's taking water on, and they're sitting here, and it's frustrating, and they're just like, this is a time to get away and just focus on ministry. But as a brother in Christ, I could be there to just listen to them, and then to also give sound biblical wisdom from, things that I have seen in my life, and even through other people as well. And so we've had other people, mentors or teens who are active in the ministry, but also need to be ministered to. And so after the little kids leave and the teens are there doing reset and stuff like that, there's an opportunity for real growth happening in their life too, beyond just growing in how they work in ministry. And so I think that was a big deal over these past 16 plus years. It's just getting to be there to help uplift another brother or sister in Christ.
Awesome.
Is great.
Definitely, absolutely.
Amen.
Cool. All right, we're all good, right? So I appreciate you guys stopping by, checking out the podcast. Like I said, we have plenty others on the lineup, both between things that we want to talk about, but also interviewing a lot of people inside of our church, getting their testimonies, because that's so important, right?
Yeah.
People's testimonies, so powerful.
Yep.
And we have so many incredible testimonies. Our church is full of some very bizarre and interesting ones. So I really look forward to getting to those. And so thanks for joining the podcast, guys, and we'll see you next time.
So.